Welcome to your daily dose of theological German, where a sentence a day keeps the dissertation detractors away, and we are in installment number 7 of this Lutheran work concerning the freedom of a Christian. So the first thing we see in this sentence is a da component. I've been having a lot of fun with these because Luther uses a lot of them, and so what I've been doing is, in previous episodes you might recall that I translate them by changing da to there and then just translating whatever the rest of the preposition is. Because in English we have a similar thing we do when we say things like thereby or therefore or therewith, which is a bit more archaic. And in this case you might say therefrom, which again is probably doesn't sound like anything you would actually say in English, but I suspect in older English writings you might even find that expression therefrom. But in any case, April Wilson talks about this and she says translate da as it or them or this or something, based on the context, and you can read about that in her book in chapter 12. But I think probably what will help you the most, rather than just being told tricks about how to translate the particular parts of the word, whatever tricks you might want to think are the most beneficial, if you actually understand what the purpose of a compound like this is, what it is that it's actually doing, how it functions, then you can basically translate it however you want. You could even get real paraphrasey and do something totally wild. And so just to put it in a nutshell, what's basically happening in these da compounds is that you have a preposition, and prepositions will generally take an object. And in a case where the preposition takes an object that would have otherwise just been a pronoun, you can just make it a da compound. And so essentially the da is the object of the preposition. And that's why April Wilson says to translate it as it or this, because those would be the objects of the preposition in that case. So here you would say something like from this, and so this being the object of the preposition from. So I think if you think about it that way, then you can basically do whatever you want with these da compounds, and they shouldn't be too complicated to you. But in any case, from this, okay, let's go ahead and translate. From this being the commandment, which we've just been reading about, the commandment not to have evil desires. So from that commandment, a person, he here is just picked up with the pronoun, but if you remember the previous sentence, you'll know what that's referring to. A person, any given person, he learns, and then you have an infinitive complement down here. To lose confidence, let's say, lose heart, become disheartened, something like that. To lose confidence in himself, and then you have here a zu construction, and actually this previous infinitive complement is also doing the same thing a zu construction would do. It's just that, I don't know if it's just because it's Luther or if it's because it's an older form of German. I'm not really sure, but I've noticed this a couple times already in his work that where you would expect a zu plus an infinitive, he just has the infinitive. And so that was what the first one was. The second one, though, has the zu, but it's doing the same thing, and it complements again that verb to learn there, which is conjugated there in second position. So he learns two things, in other words. He learns to lose confidence in himself, and he learns to seek what? Help. He learns to seek help elsewhere. And I just want to quickly point out this is a compound word. You can see here that it's anders and vo meaning usually something like where, and ander meaning something like other. And so you can see why that would be elsewhere. It's like from another where, another place, another place. You could even say in your translation if you wanted to, and you would be quite right. Okay, so he learns those two things, to lose confidence in himself and to seek help from somewhere else, from elsewhere. Here you have that. This das is introducing a purpose clause, so you might actually in English want to just say so that. So that he, without evil desires, might be, and thus the commandment fulfill through a different one. You might want to just say through someone else, because you can kind of tell where Luther's going to go theologically. We'll smooth that out in a second, but I just want to draw your attention here to this verb here, which is a third person verb, and it's picking up the subject from way back there. He, so that he could become free from evil desires and fulfill the commandment. And so you might be saying to yourself, I don't recognize that form. Well, that's fine. This is an important thing about German, is to pay attention to the form of the verb, and if you don't know what it is, think first about what it is not. Okay, so here you're seeing, you can assume that the verb is going to be in its lexical form, erfüllen. And so in third person singular, if it was present tense, you would have a T on the end, erfüllt. If it was past tense, then you would add an E to that. I forgot to put the umlaut on the E there. I do apologize. But this is neither of those. So then you have to kind of start thinking, well, it's not future. You would need like a werden in there somewhere. It's not going to be a some sort of like a perfect construction because there's no auxiliaries here, right? So what's going on? You're basically left with subjunctive. And so in the end, that is what this is. This is actually a third person subjunctive. And actually, so is this other one here, sei, that you can see there. Maybe I'll put it in red. Sei, that's also a subjunctive of the verb sein. And so these subjunctives are just, you might have heard when I translated, so that he might become, or might be, without evil desires, and so that he might fulfill the law through someone else. Subjunctives just communicate some kind of not totally actualized status of whatever the verbal process is that's being communicated. So it can be used for a variety of different functions where that's relevant. But in this case, I think it's just because he's talking about a hypothetical situation, and so you don't always even have to include that nuance in your translation. English doesn't really have a subjunctive, and so we have to do it other ways. So you can be creative, but many times you can even just translate it as a present or a past, and it'll still make sense because whatever hesitancy there might have been in German to really come out and construe the verbal process more concretely, that can just be built in from the context anyways, so I wouldn't overthink it, although I'm really over-explaining it. So anyways, let's finish the sentence and then we'll try to smooth the whole thing out. Which he, from himself, or you might say by himself, is not able, and so you're probably going to want to say able to fulfill. I mean, there's something elided here, right? So he's not able to what? Well, it's building on this previous clause, right? So he's not able to fulfill it by himself. Okay, so I was all over the place there. Let's just smooth this out so we can really see the whole sentence. From this, he learns to lose confidence in himself and to seek help elsewhere so that he might be without evil desires, and thus he might fulfill the commandment through someone else, which he was not able to fulfill by himself. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you found that helpful, and we'll see you tomorrow.